This is Bruce Andriach from the Buffalo News with Bob McCarthy, our political reporter, and we're going to talk today about what's been in the news this week with politics. And as it has been for the last few years, one name keeps coming up when it comes to politics in this country, and that's former President Trump. Bob, the Times had the New York Times had a story this week with a headline about what a horrible few weeks it had been for Trump with criminal investigations and court rulings against him. And of course, Herschel Walker's loss in the Senate runoff in Georgia. But you were reporting this week on what county chairs across the state in the Republican Party are doing, how they're feeling about the former president and his dominance in the party. Talk a little bit about what you learned.
Well, that's right, Bruce. And in the politics column on Sunday, we're going to just basically pose this question to a lot of Republican leaders around here. What do you think of all this? What do you think of the fact that the former president of the United States had dinner with a Holocaust denier and a white supremacist? What do you think about his string of losses? He lost 5 out of 6 of the Senate races that he made endorsements for. And he's also been found to have all kinds of legal problems as a result of very serious charges brought in New York State against him. So there's this feeling, I think, a little bit that there is some trepidation about Donald Trump being the standard bearer for the Republican Party once again. Could he win again? Well, he probably could, but there's this feeling and a growing fear, I think, that he may not be the right candidate with all of this baggage that's around him. So we asked the party chairman. Some of them just didn't want to talk about it, but others were kind of on the fence. A few more were coming around saying, "Gee, the former president has to be very careful." And then we had one chairman who said he's the wrong man to be the representative of our party, the wrong man for us to put up there as the real representative of the Republican Party. So what we're seeing is a little bit of erosion there, a little bit of trepidation to acknowledge there's erosion, and a lot of I just don't want to talk about it.
Right. I wonder if I imagine that's part of it, that after really 7 years of this now, it was 2015 when he first announced that at some point the Republican leaders would rather not talk about it anymore. Is that sort of what you found?
Yeah, and remember that we have people like Florida Governor DeSantis just kind of waiting in the wings, and he seems to be very patient and watching and waiting and not saying a lot either. And I think he's just going to wait and see what developments surround the former president before he makes any kind of a commitment to take on who is, no question about it, remains the leader of the Republican Party, and he still has a huge base. Let's not ever forget that, and that he could probably win the nomination today. But the questions arise after all of these various developments continuing to pile on to Donald Trump.
And 2 years will go by very quickly as we consider what that's going to mean for the presidential election in 2024. On another Republican-related matter, Republicans across the country, the narrative since election night is they didn't see the wave, the tsunami that some Republicans were hoping for. But in New York State, Republicans, especially in House races, fared a lot better than I think people would have expected. And part of the reason for that is because Republicans, we know for several years, have been swamped by Democrats in party enrollment in New York. But I'm fascinated by this other story you're working on right now. What have you learned about party affiliation in New York State?
Well, if you look at the latest statistics, Bruce, you'll see that surprisingly, but maybe not surprisingly, but astonishingly, I think, we could see that those who are unaffiliated, blanks, have now overtaken Republicans as the second largest voting bloc in New York State. Let's just look at some numbers here for 2022. Democrats far and above with about 6 million registered voters. Republicans come in at about 2.7 million voters, but blanks are now at 2.8 million voters. And it does seem to reflect a growing feeling of disgust, I guess, with the polarization and extreme positions taken on both sides. We see some of the same numbers in Erie County, although not quite as much. Dems in Erie County are at about 290,000, Republicans about 157,000, blanks 135,000. But if you compare that to 1996, Dems were 291,000, Repubs 174,000, blanks back then only 82,000. So while they haven't overtaken everybody the way they haven't overtaken the Republicans the way they have across the state. The blank voters are consistently noting gains and about ready, it seems to me, at some point to take over as number two in Erie County also. And again, that seems to reflect a feeling of just people who don't want to be part of what they consider to be extreme positions on both sides.
So the inclination when you hear that, for me anyway, is that this is bad news for the Republican Party, but I don't think it's necessarily good news for the Democratic Party. Is that right?
Well, the Dems say that they are basically have gained because while there's been population loss in especially in places like Erie County, they've remained the same. So you really can't get away from the fact that they continue to substantially outnumber the Republicans.
Right.
But the thing to really consider is these now unaffiliated voters. Those are the ones who are going to make the difference, and which
Right.
both parties are going to go after. So the Democrats, even though they have a very large plurality in registration, they can't take them for granted. They have to really point a lot of their advertising at them. And that's why one of the things I found out is that it used to be that the major parties would not send mail to the unaffiliated. Now they do because
Right.
they know they're a key voting bloc.
And if it's bad for the Republicans and better for the Democrats, is this a signal to Democrats that going too far to the left is not the move, that the move is to go more toward the middle?
If they're smart,
Yeah.
it should be a message that they embrace, I think. We do see it here and there. We saw it very much as the message of Congressman Tom Suozzi as he tried to take on Governor Hochul in the primary this year, but it didn't work.
Right.
And that's not to say that Kathy Hochul represents the far left of the party either, because I think most people don't see her that way, especially when she ran against a far left candidate in Jumaane Williams in the primary.
Right.
So that image, anyway, however true it may or may not be, I think seems to have shown that there was some attractiveness in that kind of position this year.
And then one last question about this. Is there kind of a demographic average for what this non-affiliated voter is? Are they, suburban, younger, older? What have you found
Well,
in
we looked
what they've done?
at a number of just kind of representative sample of some of the people who have signed up pretty much in the last month as new voters. Awful lot of young voters, Bruce.
Mm.
And one of the people we've talked to for our story that's coming up is a young fellow who's 19, and he just said, "I'm turned off by all the polarization. I don't want to have any part of either of these people, and I'll make up my own mind." But we also see people who have been voters for a long time and are making the same jump.
Right.
And so it's a real factor, I think, now in our politics and will be going forward.
Well, and it will be fascinating to see how this plays out. I mean, it's been most of my lifetime, there's been talk of will a legitimate third party emerge? And maybe this is an indication that it kind of is, that third party is, we don't want the parties.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, any kind of effort that there has been in the past, like with independence or reform or some of these other ones that have come up in third party candidates, if they're part of an organized party, That doesn't seem to have worked in the
Right.
past. But and certainly these unaffiliateds will never be organized in any way, but they will be a force. And you're right, they're going to have to be reckoned with. Yeah.
Right. No, that's fascinating. Bob, thanks so much. I'm looking forward to reading both articles, and let's do this again next week.
You bet, Bruce.
All right. Take care.